Here we are for Chapter 5, first section of All Quiet on the Western Front. And in Chapter 4, we discussed and are still focused on the imagery, the contrast, and the personification in that chapter of the battlefield and what it means to be in battle. In Chapter 5, we change up a little bit, but we're still looking for images. We're still looking for personification. We're still looking for contrast. These are very important ideas in the book that lead to central ideas. All of these images help us to understand what the author is trying to say about a particular central idea. Any kind of central idea like justice, or what he's trying to say about war, or what he's trying to say about humanity, or what he's trying to say about humor or home or indifference or tragedy, generational issues. These are all central ideas that the author is trying to say something about. Try and figure out what those things are. Okay, first section of Chapter 5. Killing each separate louse are lice, head lice, is a tedious business. Tedious means annoyingly slow. When a man has hundreds, the little beasts are hard, and the everlasting cracking with one's fingernails very soon becomes wearisome. So Jaden has rigged up the lid of a boot polish tin with a piece of wire over the lighted stump of a candle. The lice are simply thrown into this little pan. Crack, and they're done for. We sit around. The crack is an auditory image because it makes sound. There are lots of those. Look for those. Don't forget, auditory images are sound, not sight, sound. We sit around with our shirts on our knees, our bodies naked to the warm air, and our hands at work. High has a particularly fine brand of louse, or lice. They have a red cross on their heads. He suggests that he brought them back from the hospital at Thorhout, where they attended personally on a surgeon general. He says he means to use the fat that slowly accumulates in the tin lid for polishing his boots, and roars with laughter for half an hour at his own joke. But he gets little response today. We are too preoccupied with another affair. The rumor has materialized. Himmelstas has come. He appeared yesterday. We've already heard the well-known voice. He seems to have overdone it with a couple of young recruits on the plowed field at home, and unknown to him, the son of the local magistrate, that means judge, was watching. That cooked his goose. So Himmelstas did something mean to a judge's son, and so they're paying. So the army is paying him back by sending him up to the front lines instead of keeping him back. So he has to see battle. So this is a punishment for him. Again, justice in war, a whole different kind of justice. He will get some surprises here. Jaden has been meditating for hours what to say to him. High goes thoughtfully at his great paws and winks at me. The thrashing was the high water mark of his life. In other words, when we beat him up, that was the high water mark of High's life. In other words, he enjoyed it immensely, beating up Himmelstas. He tells me he often dreams of it. Kropp and Mueller are amusing themselves. From somewhere or other, probably the Pioneer Cookhouse, Kropp has bagged for himself a mess tin full of beans. Mueller squints hungrily into it, but checks himself and says, Albert, what would you do if it were suddenly peacetime again? So here's a really big philosophical question. They don't often have time to think about these things, but when they're not on the front, they come back and start thinking about it. There won't be any peacetime, says Albert bluntly. Well, but if, persists Mueller, what would you do? Clear out of this, growls Kropp. Of course, and then what? Get drunk, says Albert. Don't talk rot. I mean, seriously. So do I, says Kropp. What else should a man do? Cat becomes interested. He levies tribute on Kropp's tin of beans. Swallows some, in other words, he takes some, swallows some, then considers for a while and says, You might get drunk first, of course, but then you'd take the next train for home and mother. Peacetime, man. Albert. He fumbles in his oilcloth pocketbook for a photograph and suddenly shows it all around. My old woman! Then he puts it back and swears, Damned lousy war. So Cat's showing a picture of his wife. These are the things that people at war carry with them to remind themselves of home. He fumbles in his oilcloth pocketbook for a photograph and suddenly shows it all around. My old woman. Then he puts it back and swears damn lousy word. I can't believe I said that twice. Again. It's all very well for you to talk, I tell him. You've a wife and children. True, he nods, and I have to see to it that they've something to eat. We laugh. They won't lack for that, cat. You'd scrounge it from somewhere. Mueller is insatiable and gives himself no peace. Insatiable means he can't be satisfied. When you're insatiable with food, that means you eat as much food as you possibly can. You're never satisfied. You need to eat more and more and more. So that's true. Insatiable is true of almost anything. If you're an avid reader, you can't get enough of reading books. You have to constantly read books. That's what insatiable means. He wakes High Westhouse out of his dream. Hi, what would you do if it was peacetime? Give you a kick in the backside for the way you talk, I say. How does it come about exactly? How does the cow shit come on the roof? Metaphor, retorts Mueller laconically, and turns to High Westhouse again. It is too much for High. He shakes his freckled head. You mean when the war's over? Exactly, you've said it. Well, there'd be women, of course, eh? High licks his lips. Sure. By Jove, yes, says High, his face melting. Then I'd grab some good buxom dame. That means a woman with big boobs. Some real kitchen wench. And plenty to get hold of, you know? So a woman who's thick. She's got a lot of meat on her bones. You know, and jump straight into bed. Just you think, boys, a real feather bed with a spring mattress. I wouldn't put trousers on again for a week. Everyone is silent. The picture is too good. Our flesh creeps. At last Mueller pulls himself together and says, and then what? A pause. Then High explains rather awkwardly, if I were a non-com, I'd stay with the Prussians and serve out my time. High, you've got a screw loose, surely, I say. Have you ever dug peat? He retorts good-naturedly. You try it. That means digging dirt. Peat is a particular kind of dirt. So he's saying that's a lot better than being at war. Then he pulls a spoon out of the top of his boot and reaches over into Crop's mess tin. It can't be worse than digging trenches, I ventured. High chews and grins. It lasts longer, though, and there's no getting out of it either. But man, surely it's better at home. Some ways, says he, and with open mouth sinks into a daydream. This is one of the big ideas in terms of the lost generation. They're stuck between what's good about home and what isn't good about home. These are things to think about as you move forward. You know, in the war, some things are better because you have some kind of camaraderie with your friends, and at home they don't understand you. But home is better because you can eat when you want and sleep when you want and go to work and be normal. So there is no normal for soldiers anymore, especially in this war. You can see what he's thinking. There's the mean little hut on the moors, the hard work on the heath from morning till night in the heat, the miserable pay, the dirty laborer's clothes. So he's thinking about the job that he has at home, which is a very hard job, and how much he really doesn't want to do that. There's nothing really to go back to. In the army in peacetime, you've nothing to trouble about, he goes on. Your food's found every day, or else you kick up a row. You've a bed, every week, clean underwear like a perfect gent. You do your non-com's duty. You have a good suit of clothes. In the evening, you're a free man and go off to the pub. So he's saying that even at home, if he's in the army and not at war, if he's a non-commissioned officer, he doesn't have to fight in the war. So every day you get paid, you get fed regularly, you can go out at night, your day is done, and it's an easy life. He's thinking of, when he goes home, staying in the army. And everybody else is saying, you're nuts. You're absolutely nuts. High is extraordinarily set on his idea. He's in love with it. And when your 12 years are up, you get your pension and become the village Bobby. Bobby is a policeman. And you can walk about the whole day. So, you know, back in the day, especially in small towns, if you're the village cop, it's not like today's day when everybody is accusing everybody and beating everybody. You just walk around. You're the cop on the beat. You don't do a whole lot. So he'd like that kind of life. He's already sweating on it. And just you think how you'd be treated. Here a dram, there a pint. In other words, somebody's going to give you a free drink, alcohol, anytime you want. Everybody wants to be well in with a Bobby. Everybody wants to be friends with a policeman. You'll never be a non-com, though, Hi, interrupts Kat. Hi looks at him sadly and is silent. His thoughts still linger over the clear evenings in autumn, the Sundays in the heather, the village bells, the afternoons and evenings with the servant girls, the fried bacon and barley, the carefree hours in the alehouse. So they're dreaming of what they would be if they weren't here. I mean, dreams are what keep us all alive in some regard. I spend a lot of time thinking about being upstate instead of being in Brooklyn because it helps me get through my day. And this is what helps them get through their day. What helps you get through your day? That's the question. And what do we dream about? And what is it we have to do to get that dream and work towards it? So in this case, what he has to do to get towards his dream is to stay alive. And that's often due to chance. You don't know. You can do the best you can, but at some point, that's it. If it's your day to die, it's your day to die. It's an awful place to be if you're 19 or 20 years old, to have to constantly be thinking about dying or dreaming of home. He can't part with all these dreams. So abruptly, he merely growls, "What silly questions you do ask." He pulls his shirt over his head and buttons up his tunic. Tunic is a shirt. "What would you do, Jaden?" asks Krop. Jaden thinks of one thing only. "See to it that Himmelstas didn't get past me." So apparently he would like most to have him in a cage and sail into him with a club every morning. To Krop, he says warmly, "If I were in your place, I'd see to it that I became a lieutenant. Then you could grind him until the water in his backside boils." So the dream that Jaden has is only getting back at Himmelstas for all the pain he's caused him. "And you, Dettering?" asked Mueller, like an inquisitor. Like an inquisitor is a simile. He's a born schoolmaster with all his questions. Dettering is sparing with his words. That means he doesn't use a lot of words. But on this subject, he speaks. He looks at the sky and says only the one sentence: "I would go straight on with the harvesting." In other words, he'd go back to farming. And look at the contrast here. He's saying that Dettering usually doesn't talk too much, but here he's talking. So there's a contrast in how war has affected even this person. In your dreams, you do something, when you're dreaming of another life, you do something that's more so. Then he gets up and walks off. He is worried. His wife has to look after the farm. They've already taken away 2 more of his horses, which means they don't have any money at home, and they have to sell off parts of their farm. Every day he reads the papers that come to see whether it is raining in his little corner of Oldenburg. They haven't brought in the hay yet. At this moment, Himmelstas appears. He comes straight up to our group. Jaden's face turns red. He stretches his length on the grass and shuts his eyes in excitement. Himmelstas is a little hesitant. His gait, that means the way he walks, becomes slower. Then he marches up to us. No one makes any motion to stand up. Krop looks up at him with interest. He continues to stand in front of us and wait, and no one says anything. He launches a, "Well." A couple of seconds go by. Apparently Himmelstas doesn't quite know what to do. He would like most to set us all on the run again, but he seems to have learned already that the front line isn't a parade ground. He tries it on, though, and by addressing himself to one instead of to all of us, hopes to get some response. Krop is nearest, so he favors him. "Well, you here too?" But Albert's no friend of his. "A bit longer than you, I fancy," he retorts. The red mustache twitches. "You don't recognize me anymore? What?" Jaden now opens his eyes. "I do, though." Himmelstas turns to him. "Jaden, isn't it?" Jaden lifts his head. "And do you know what you are?" Himmelstas is disconcerted. It means he's confused and not happy. Since when have we become so familiar? Since when did we become friends? I don't remember that we ever slept in the gutter together." He has no idea what to make of the situation. He didn't expect this open hostility, but he is on his guard. He has already had some rot dinned into him about getting a shot in the back. In other words, people have already warned him and threatened him that he's going to get shot in the back because of the way he treats people. The question about the gutter makes Jaden so mad that he becomes almost witty. "No, you slept there by yourself." Himmelstas begins to boil, but Jaden gets in ahead of him. He must bring off his insult. "Wouldn't you like to know what you are? A dirty hound." That's what you are. I've been wanting to tell you that for a long time. A hound is a dog. Is Himmelstas really a dog? No, it's a metaphor. The satisfaction of months shines in his dull pig's eyes as he spits out, "Dirty hound." Himmelstas lets fly too now. "What's that, you muckrake, you dirty peat stealer? Stand up there. Bring your heels together when your superior officer speaks to you." Jaden waves him off. "You take a run and jump it yourself, Himmelstas." Himmelstas is a raging book of army regulations. Another metaphor. The Kaiser couldn't be more insulted. The Kaiser couldn't be more insulted. "Jaden, I command you as your superior officer, stand up." "Anything else you'd like?" asked Jaden. "Will you obey my order or not?" Jaden replies without knowing it in the well-known classical phrase. That means he gives him the finger. At the same time, he ventilates his backside. That means he farts at Himmelstas. "I'll have you court-martialed," storms Himmelstas. That means I'll have you brought up on charges and sent to jail. A court-martial is the jail in the military. We watch him disappear in the direction of the orderly room. Hai and Jaden burst into a regular Pete Digger's bellow. Everybody's laughing. Hai laughs so much that he dislocates his jaw and suddenly stands there helpless with his mouth wide open. Albert has to put it back again by giving it a blow with his fist, by punching him. Cat is troubled. "If he reports you, it'll be pretty serious." "Do you think he will?" asks Jaden. "Sure to," I say. "The least you'll get will be 5 days close arrest," says Cat. That doesn't worry Jaden. 5 days clink or 5 days rest. "And if they send you to the fortress?" urges the thoroughgoing Mueller. "Well, for the time being, the war will be over so far as I'm concerned." Jaden is a cheerful soul. There aren't any worries for him. He goes off with Hai and Lear so that they won't find him in the first flush of excitement. Mueller hasn't finished yet. He tackles Krop again. "Albert, if you were really at home now, what would you do?" Krop is contented now and more accommodating. "How many of us were there in the class exactly?" We count up. Out of 20, 7 are dead, 4 wounded, 1 in a madhouse. That means a crazy lunatic asylum. That makes 12. 3 of them are lieutenants, says Mueller. "Do you think they would still let Cantorek sit on them?" Don't forget, Cantorek is the teacher that they had before they went to war. "We guess not. We wouldn't let ourselves be sat on, for that matter." What do you mean by the threefold theme in William Tell?" asks Krop reminiscently, and roars with laughter. In other words, here's another example of contrast. They're talking about life before the war and when they were in school. That's a question that they would have been asked about a book, like I'm asking questions of you. What do you mean by the threefold theme? What are the threefold central idea of this particular book? What was the purpose of the Poetic League of Göttingen? Asked Mueller suddenly and earnestly. So they're kind of pretending that, all of these things that are school things that came before aren't even close to being important when you're dealing with life and death. "How many children has Charles the Bald?" I interrupt gently. "You'll never make anything of your life, Baumer," croaks Mueller. "Where was the Battle of Zana?" Krop wants to know. "You lack the studious mind, Krop. Sit down. 3-, I say. In other words, teachers give you zeros. You know how I'm constantly telling you, if you don't get this done by today, you're going to get a 0? Well, that's what Cantorek did to these students. But now they're at war, and life is life. And for an example, after you leave high school, you're going to leave my class eventually. And you've said to me that it's been hard work. And you can't possibly know now what the real world really is. But I try to tell it, but you can't know it because you don't actually know it. There are some of you who have experienced some pretty terrible things in your lives. And so perhaps you have an idea of it. But once you leave high school, things are going to be a lot different. Real life is a lot different than now. And it won't be war, hopefully, God willing, it's not going to be war. But, when you work and you go to school and you're doing all kinds of things and you have to support yourself and things are tough, it's not a party zone. High school is a relatively easy experience. And what I'm trying to do for you, instead of being like Cantorek, is I'm trying to show you things that relate to your life so that you'll be prepared in some kind of way to understand what happens after this. So, back to it. What offices did Lycurgus consider the most important for the state? That's talking about Greek and Roman history and social studies. Asked Mueller, pretending to take off his pince nez. Pince nez are glasses. What are the most important things about? So they're really mocking what school was. Does it go, we Germans fear God and none else in the whole world? We, the Germans, fear God and I submit. That means I stop. How many inhabitants has Melbourne, Australia? Asked Mueller. What a silly question when you're in the middle of a war. Who cares how many people are in Melbourne? Um, how do you expect to succeed in life if you don't know that? I asked Albert hotly. So, it's kind of like you saying, when am I ever going to use algebra? Okay. Believe it or not, there's a place for all of this. It helps you to think, but you can't know that yet. You'll see eventually. Which he caps with, what is meant by cohesion? We remember mightily little of all that rubbish. Anyway, it has never been the slightest use to us. At school, nobody ever taught us how to light a cigarette in a storm of rain, nor how a fire could be made with wet wood, nor that it is best to stick a bayonet in the belly, because there it doesn't get jammed as it does in the ribs. So they're saying, here's a contrast, home school never taught us how to survive. That's important. Mueller says thoughtfully, what's the use? We'll have to go back and sit on the forms again. I consider that out of the question. We might take a special exam. That needs preparation. And if you do get, And if you do get through, what then? A student life isn't any better. You have no money. You have to work like the devil. It's a bit better, but it's rot all the same. Everything they teach you. Kropp supports me. How can a man take all that stuff seriously when he's once been out here? Still, you must have an occupation of some sort, insists Mueller, as though he were Cantorek himself. Albert cleans his nails with a knife. We are surprised at the delicacy, but it is merely pensiveness. Pensiveness means to be thinking. He puts the knife away and continues. That's just it. Cat and Dettering and High will go back to their jobs because they had them already. Himmelstas, too. But we never had any. How will we ever get used to one after this here? He makes a gesture towards the front. Very important idea in the book. What we'll want is a private income, and then we'll be able to live by ourselves in a wood. I say, but at once feel ashamed of this absurd idea. Why do you think he's ashamed? Something to think about. But what will really happen when we go back, wonders Mueller, and even he is troubled. Kropp gives a shrug. I don't know. Let's get back first, then we'll find out. We are all utterly at a loss. What could we do? I ask. I don't want to do anything, replies Kropp, wearily. You'll be dead one day, so what does it matter? I don't think we'll ever go back, and this all goes to this lost generation idea. When I think about it, Albert, I say after a while, rolling over on my back, when I hear the word peacetime, it goes to my head. And if it really came, I think I would do some unimaginable thing, something, that it's worth having lain here in the muck for. But I can't even imagine anything. All I do know is that this business about professions and studies and salaries and so on, it makes me sick. It is and always was disgusting. I don't see anything at all, Albert. All at once, everything seems to me confused and hopeless. Hopeless, key word. Kropp feels it too. It will go pretty hard with us all, but nobody at home seems to worry much about it. Contrast. 2 years of shells and bombs, a man won't peel that off as easy as a sock. So they're going to have PTSD. They're not going to forget what's happened here. How do you get rid of that and go back to work? We agree that it's the same for everyone, not only for us here, but everywhere. For everyone who is our age, to some more and to others less, it is the common fate of our generation. Very important. Albert expresses it. The war has ruined us for everything. So even if they're alive, even if they go home, they're ruined because of war. He is right. We are not youth any longer. We don't want to take the world by storm. We are fleeing. We're running away. We fly from ourselves. We don't even want to, We don't even want to be in our same head. We want to be away from our own thoughts. We're not even running from an enemy anymore or home anymore. We're flying from our own thoughts and dreams because it's been so difficult. The war has made their only life. From our life. We were 18 and had begun to love life and the world, and we had to shoot it to pieces. The first bomb, the first explosion, burst in our hearts. We are cut off from activity, from striving, from progress. We believe in such things no longer. We believe in the war. So at the end of this section of chapter 5, first section of chapter 5, we understand through imagery and contrast and conversations how the war has affected these men. You know, the very, very biggest central idea is right here in this section about what the author wants us to understand about what war does to people and humanity and lives, etc. So moving forward, it's something to think about. So look for images that relate to that idea. Look for personification, if there was any. I don't think there was much. And when we say images, we talk about very specific things: similes and metaphors, descriptive adjectives, and auditory images that describe how these men feel at this point. And next up, part 2, chapter 5.